Hi, Liz Ann here. Today I wanted to talk about something that a friend of mine requested that I would do a video on, and that is codependent relationships. I also am going to leave the written format on my blog if you would rather read than sit and watch a video. First of all, I want to say that codependency is not something that the American Psychological Association terms as a mental illness. So, where you might hear of like schizophrenic or different other labels out there, codependency isn't considered a mental illness. Originally, the term of codependency came about when they saw phenomena of people with alcoholism or drug addiction that had partners or family members that enabled their alcoholism and did not hold them responsible for their actions. So they might do things like make excuses for them, give them a lot of sympathy. They might bail them out of jail if they were, put in jail for their drinking. Maybe supply money so that they, be a supplier for them even. And it was, very unhealthy, and that's where we get our original codependent term from. Now, today, that term has been broadened into a greater spectrum of relationships that are rooted in unhealthy ways and emotionally unhealthy ways. So, in my opinion, I feel like all relationships out there are codependent. And the reason being is if we just look at the word codependent, the word co means joint, mutual, or common. And dependency means subordinate or controlled by another. And so I feel like that every relationship that we go into, if we don't have any reason to depend on that person for some sort of validation, comfort, connection, of feeling needed, then what is the point of being in a relationship? If we're completely independent, 100% independent, we really don't need to have another person in our lives to connect with that way. Not with an agreement. In a relationship, you enter into some form of an agreement with another person. A healthy relationship, you do that with awareness. You do it with intention. You come into that relationship knowing ahead of time what the expectations of that relationship is. In unhealthy relationships, you kind of normally just stumble into that. You just suddenly meet somebody, you feel the fluttery feelings, you go with the flow, it feels good, and you end up in this relationship. And there's not always this discussion and this talking about the expectations of a relationship. You may move in together, you may, because you feel good being together. And you don't really, all you know is you feel good with this person and you want to be with this person, but you don't really have an agreement. That's the difference between being in a relationship being in awareness, and being in one and just, unconsciously, sometimes unhealthy things, many times, most of the time, unhealthy things start to fester and come up in that relationship. In any relationship it will at times, but especially in relationships that aren't done with intention and awareness. And so that brings me to what I wanted to discuss about. First, I wanted to talk about the signs of being in a codependent relationship. There's many, you can Google them, find many signs out there. Some of the ones I have found was an inability to find happiness or fulfillment outside the relationship. So it's good to find happiness and fulfillment within the relationship, but it shouldn't be our only source of happiness and fulfillment. And then having strong fears of abandonment is another one. Where it's just to the point sometimes it can become healthy where you become jealous, you become suspicious at times, anxious and worried because you think the relationship might break up, and you become unhealthy because you start to act on those feelings to prevent this abandonment from happening. Also, finding your self-worth in that special someone or that other person. We should never, ever, ever look for our self-worth in the eyes of somebody else. It always feels good to have somebody look at us and adore us, love us, tell us, you know, you really mean a lot to me, I think you're wonderful. That feels so good, and that does make us feel important and worthy. But it's so vitally important that we find our self-worth in the fact that we are a unique human being and that we have every right to be here just as much as anybody else. That we are valuable just because by fact of virtue that we are. And we're just a person, and every person is valuable. There's not any person that is more valuable than another person, ever, ever. Anytime people think that way, it's because they are thinking wrong. So that's another one. Ignoring your own needs at the expense of taking care of this other person. That's another big red flag. I mean, we always, in a relationship, take care of the other person to an extent because we love them and we want to show them, you know, our love. And that's one way that we reach out. But when you ignore your needs to cater to somebody's dysfunction or their needs, then it becomes unhealthy. The last sign I have here is the feelings that you get like when you're away from that person, almost like withdrawals, as if an addiction. Like you cannot stand to be away from them for any long period of time. When you are away from them, you become anxious, you become agitated, you know, you need to hurry up and be with them again. That's an addiction. That's an unhealthy relationship that needs to be worked on. And so another thing is that the difference, like I said, of a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship usually lies in the difference between one, the healthy one has mutual, consented, you know, both of you consented, thought out, intended love. And the other one is just I've been thrown into this relationship or I've fallen into this love and there's an addiction going on here. You find the same signs as you do in an addiction. In an addiction, you initially have feelings of euphoria. You just, when you first take that drug or whatever, these feelings that take away pain and suffering and the negative feelings that you were feeling for so long, something comes along and just lifts it, and it's just this euphoric feeling. It just feels so good. And then what happens is that feeling starts to abate, that good euphoric feeling, and up comes the pain again. And so now we seek out that thing, that fix that we got to get rid of that pain. And we habitually keep doing this. The cycle keeps going until it becomes an addiction. It becomes a habit, and it becomes an addiction. And we can't live without this substance because whenever we don't have the substance, then we have the pain. And it actually begins to make the pain worse because it's kind of like having a broken foot or a broken hand, a broken bone. You can take a pain medicine all you want, but if you don't get that bone set and healed, that pain medicine is only going to work for so long, and then the medication is going to wear off and the pain's going to come back. And each time that pain comes back, it's going to be worse because it needs to be healed. And putting it off is just making it worse. And so it's the same thing with emotional pain, and it's the same thing in relationships. It's like in the beginning it's a euphoric feeling, you know, but that feeling is transient, and then we're going to be going back to that fix. Panic over not having that fix, the same thing. Unable to cope without the fix. Little or no sense of self or self-worth without the fix. Isolation from friends and family is a big one. That's a big red flag. If you have to isolate yourself in order to have your fix from your friends and your family, the people that really do love and care about you, that is not a healthy relationship to anything, whether it's a substance or a person. If you have to hide, if you have to isolate, and you can't find time for your family because you're so absorbed in this person, that's not healthy. So anyways, those are some of the things I wanted to go over about what codependency is all about. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about why codependent relationships come about. And usually it is because many people in their childhoods, while they were developing, had emotional needs that were ignored or denied. And that happens so often, in this world. It's sad. Just by way of an example, my mom, when I would cry, could not deal with it. She'd get very nervous. She would hurry and try to, make me stop crying, whatever it was, without really finding out the need. She just was nervous about it and made me feel nervous. And she wasn't comfortable with her own feelings. My father was mean. He would, if I cried, he would tell me I was a baby. He would, tell me I was feeling sorry for myself, and he'd just be like, "Oh, brother, I can't believe you cried," And then if we were angry, that was just a big no-no. We could really get in big trouble if we showed anger. Even though he could show anger, we weren't allowed to. And so there was a lot of emotions. Even when we were having a lot of fun, if my father came along and saw that and he felt agitated about it, he'd put a damper on that. "You guys are being too silly. You can't have that much fun." So emotions were really just denied and put a lid on, So it caused a lot of codependency in me later in life, just a phenomenal amount. So another way that homes create these codependent children is sometimes in religious homes. I've seen this too, and there's so many ways, but these are just some examples. A lot of times in religious homes, children are taught about God, and that can be a good thing, but they are taught something that they can't see or feel to believe in, and then they're taught to sacrifice their life for it before they've even developed a sense of who they are or what their life is or means. They haven't developed mentally, they haven't developed spiritually, they haven't developed emotionally, and they're many times told, you have to give up yourself, your life, to please this unknown God that you can't see, but we can, and we're just telling you there, and you better believe us, and you need to give up. And they don't tell it like that. They teach them it's unselfishness, it's self-sacrifice. And what happens is then many of these children grow up to be teenagers that are very depressed. And depressed, I've said this before, and I learned it from my therapist, is you pressed down. You press that person down, they will become depressed. So these teenagers grow up and they don't really even know what's wrong with them. They might have a good, Christian or holy family that are sweet people, but underneath it all, what's gone on is they were pressed down. They were told, no, you don't think about you. That's selfish. And so that can cause later problems with codependency, and it's a hidden wound in there that needs to be healed. So bottom line is, it's really important that we go into a relationship with awareness, with a mutual agreement and a mutual understanding, with boundaries. It doesn't mean that if we have tendencies toward codependency, we cannot be in a relationship. It's just that we need to be open and honest about these tendencies with our loved one, and we need to have an agreement and boundaries there, healthy boundaries. And sometimes we need to, maybe go seek out a couples counseling session, or, get some advice and some help on, how can we do this in a healthy way, so that when these codependency tendencies come up, we can be of help to each other instead of making them worse. And so that's all I have for now. I hope this has been helpful. Again, I'm going to put my written version of these thoughts down on my blog. I'll leave a link to my blog down below. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.